The purpose of today's training will be to learn basic concepts and procedures for the replacement of countertops. For this example, we will be replacing a standard kitchen countertop in one of our Los Arbolitos style units, although the concepts and practices outlined here can be applied to any replacement. Let's get started. As with all tasks we undertake, safety is a priority. Proper PPE and first aid equipment should always be worn and available. Gloves, eye protection, and a dust mask should be used whenever cutting wood, and although countertops are not extremely heavy, there can be an awkward angle in the lifting and placing, so a back brace is recommended, as well as using a two-man lift. Know where the first aid and eye wash kits are prior to the beginning in the event they become necessary. Replacing countertops require the use and knowledge of power tools as well as various hand tools common to maintenance. Depending on availability of space on your property, consider designating an area where all countertop work will be done. Having all the necessary tools and materials kept in one place will make fabrication considerably faster. The tools needed to complete this project will be demonstrated throughout this video. At a minimum, you will need a skill saw, a jigsaw, a belt sander, a router with a flush trim bit, a common house iron or heat gun, a measuring tape, a carpenter square, a marking tool such as pencil or Sharpie, a fine file, utility knife, hammer, and a couple of sawhorses. Materials needed can most easily be purchased through HD Supply. There are several options in design and color to choose from depending on preference. Today, we will be installing a basic laminate top in butter rum. When ordering, take into account the total linear feet needed, as well as how many end splashes, those are the finishing ends that meet a wall, and end caps, and those are the finishing ends that show at the end of the countertop. More than likely, you will need 2 complete countertop slabs to complete this job. Now that we have our tools and materials, we can begin the process. Start by measuring how long you will need the top to be. Begin at the wall and measure to the end of the cabinetry. Add 1 inch of overhang to allow for the end cap buildup. Once you have that written down, measure again from the wall to the sink center. Record that measurement also. Next, measure any smaller non-sink side areas requiring replacement, and note whether or not you will be able to overhang for the end caps. In some cases, like this one, we could only overhang the outsides of the smaller tops on either side of the stove. Here is where I would strongly recommend 2 things. First, have a standard form like the one shown here for your measurements. This will provide you the opportunity to make job notes to refer back to, like to which side is the wall and which side of the sink will the disposer need to be installed. Secondly, never wait until the day of install to take your measurements. The decision to replace countertops is usually made during either the pre-move out inspection or in the process of an annual inspection. Have your countertop worksheet and tape measure ready during inspections. Doing so will allow you to order and prefabricate before the clock starts on your turn, adding time back into your pocket. Part 4. Demo and Prep. Now that we have our measurements and ordered our materials, it is time to take out the old tops and prep for install. This is far easier than it may appear. To begin, disconnect all plumbing under the sink to include the drain, supply lines, garbage disposal, and associated dishwasher lines. Then simply use a utility blade to cut just above the caulk line on the wall above all counter areas. This is due to the many layers of paint that have no doubt accumulated over the years. Not doing this will cause the paint to pull away from the wall in a sheet and require repair. Once completed, check to confirm that the countertop is not attached by screws underneath. If so, you'll need to remove those screws. Next, simply give the front of the top a strong pull upward. Most of the time, this will be all the force needed. In some cases, you may use a hammer to hit upward at the front edge of the top to break it loose. When it is broken loose from the cabinetry, Work the top up and down while checking to make sure you have a clean break from the wall at the line you previously cut. If not, stop and cut the areas still holding on. Once you are certain the countertop is free in all areas, simply lift and remove. If you are reusing the sink, you can decide on whether to remove before or after the top comes off. Repeat this process for the stove side tops. Scrape any remaining caulking or buildup off of the wall. Check to ensure the wall is smooth and free of loose material. Very often it is necessary that a thin skim coat of mud be applied to the area of the wall where the caulking was scraped. It may also be necessary to scrape the installation surface to remove any debris that may interfere with the proper seating of the new top. Part 5. Fabrication. To begin, first lay out your slab face up on the stands. Carefully inspect surfaces and edges for damage. Always pad your stands to avoid damaging the finish to the countertop. Chips and scrapes are almost impossible to repair, so take all precautions. Measure and mark total length of new top. Run a strip of masking tape here to ensure the finish does not chip while cutting. Make it a practice to always cut the end that will be against the side wall when possible. This is in case something goes wrong when you cut. Most often, a small mistake will be unseen under the end cap at the wall. With your masking tape in place, turn countertop over, upside down, and measure the total length again. Double check to make sure your measurement is in line with the tape line on the face. Use a carpenter square to mark a dark cut line. There are more than a few ways to make this cut. For this video, we will demonstrate a very basic method that will ensure a straight cut every time. You'll need your saw, a straight edge. In this case, we have made a pre-cut 1x2 made to the dimension of the countertop to be cut. You'll also need a few clamps. Begin by dropping your saw blade directly on the cut line. Move your straight edge to the side of your saw guide and clamp in place. Now, as long as you are in constant contact between the straight edge and the saw guide, you'll be making a perfect cut. Remember to keep your other hand safely holding the end of the top throughout the cut to ensure it does not fall away and damage your edge. Follow the same procedure for cutting stove side small pieces. Next, measure for sink center. Remember that the sink was measured from the wall side. Ensure your measurement here is also coming from the wall side to ensure correct placement. While many sinks are exactly in the middle of the counter, all are not. Pulling the measurement from the wrong side could result in the sink being noticeably off-center. Again, use the carpenter square to mark a dark line at sink center. Due to the different options in sink sizes and styles, I recommend you follow manufacturer's instructions to mark sink cutout line. Once the sink has been identified as the standard for your property, make a more permanent template to speed the process up. Here we have a template pre-made for the exact dimensions called for by the sink manufacturer that will be laid out with the center lines on the template and countertop matching up. When aligned correctly, mark your sink cut. As with the first cut, there are options in how you can proceed to make the sink cutout. You may want to use a jigsaw for the whole process, or a combination of a skill saw and a jigsaw. Here we will demonstrate a combination. First, make a cutout piece to provide a place to hold while cutting. Here we are simply cutting a triangle out of the center area. Then, we plunge cut all sides to within an inch or two of the corners. And finish by using a jigsaw at the corners, being careful not to let the center fall and damage the edges of the finish. Then, turn the top over to check the sink fit. The sink should sit completely flush with almost no movement in any direction. If needed, file or trim edges to get proper seating. Now, we are ready to dry fit the countertops in the unit. Part 6. Install. Now we're going to bring the countertop to the unit and put in place to check the fit. The top should be level and flush to the cabinet. Occasionally, shims may be needed in an uneven fit. Pay particular attention to the fit to the wall. If gaps exist between the backsplash and the wall, it will be necessary to scribe for a better fit. Doing this will require taking the counter back out of the unit to make the messy adjustment. First, run masking tape along the top of the backsplash along the entire length of the top. Then place countertop as far back to the wall as you can. Here we have another instance where there are multiple ways to mark a scribe line. You may be more comfortable with a common scribe or one of multiple tools sold for the sole purpose of scribing. You should try a few methods and decide what works best for you. For this video, we will demonstrate an easy and foolproof method requiring only a 1/4 inch washer and a fine tip marker or pencil. Just set the washer flat on the top of the backsplash at one end of the top and against the wall. Next, place your marker at the point inside the washer closest to the wall. Allow the washer to roll along the wall slowly, making sure you are marking a dark enough line to see. Make sure you are maintaining contact with the wall throughout this process. If not, you may end up with gaps where there were none before. Now is when you will need to move the top back to an area where you will be able to make more cuts. Place countertop with backsplash up. For this, you can use a belt sander or a jigsaw to make this cut. The faster method is usually a combination of both methods, as seen here. First, carefully cut the scribe line with a jigsaw, making sure to keep the saw blade at a level angle all the way through. A slightly angled jigsaw blade can drastically change the final product. Once you have the line cut, finish with a belt sander to smooth out any irregularities and clean up the edge. At this point, you could choose to attach the end caps while the countertop is in the work area, or you can attach in the unit. I recommend doing it in the work area as to not create unnecessary mess in the unit. To do this, you will first need to identify the correct end cap for the side you are installing. Simply match the cap to the edge of the countertop. Next, align the end cap so that the back edge of the backsplash and the front bottom edge of the countertops are flush and straight as shown here. Holding the end cap in place, apply heat with either a hot iron or a heat gun until the adhesive on the end cap is melted enough to be tacky and holds to the edge on its own. Be careful here, as overheating will only melt the adhesive to the point of no longer being tacky. The trick here is to move slowly along the entire length of the end cap, paying particular attention to the corner areas and edges. Once the end cap is holding to the edge, continue to apply pressure along the end cap with a block, or in this case a cloth, to protect from being burnt by the still hot end cap. When the end cap is cooled and firmly in place, use a handheld router with a flush trim bit to remove all excess material above the countertop surface. Now use a scraper or utility blade as shown to remove any excess material or glue that may be left along the edge. Lastly, use a fine file to work a cambered edge all along the end cap to ensure a smooth and snag-free finish. When the end cap is fully installed, you should not feel the edge at all. Now back to the unit. Dry fit the top first to double check fit, level, and pay attention to the wall edge to ensure no more scribing is required. If satisfied, remove top and apply construction glue to all surfaces where the countertop and cabinetry will be in contact. Again, check for level and solid fit. Once installed, we are ready for the end splash. Simply apply construction adhesive to the areas where the end splash and countertop meet, and also along the wall behind the end splash. Verify that the fit is correct and allow to dry. Repeat the process of installation for any remaining smaller sections of countertop being installed. Part 7. Final hookups. Install and plumb sink. Caulk edges and trim. With the countertops in place and end caps installed, we can move on to the installation of the sink and associated plumbing. We will not be getting into the plumbing aspect in the course of this training, but if there is a need, we can look into future training videos on the subject. I will offer 2 suggestions to remember when installing the plumbing for new countertops. The first is, follow closely to the manufacturer's instruction on sink insulation, and be sure to always seal the sink with a silicone-based caulk completely around the edges of the opening. A clear caulking is generally the best. And secondly, while we have open access to the other side of the sink, take the opportunity to replace as much of the plumbing as needed. A supply line is recommended replacement every 5 years. If you are unsure of the last time a supply line was replaced, don't take the chance. Replace it. Approach the rest of the plumbing in the same way. Old drain lines will only take away from the new look of your countertop. In the long run, making this a habit can very well prevent a future leak that may cost you far more time and money. With the plumbing completed, we are ready for our final touches. Caulk the entire top of the counter using a color most closely matched to the wall. A latex caulking is fine in this case. Then, caulk the seam where the end splash and countertop meet using a clear caulk. Once dried, you will not be able to see the transition. Paint all areas of the wall where any repairs were made. Now we have a new countertop installed, ready for service.